Hello and welcome to another Bodgit and Leggit video. Now we have a 2004 Citroen C5 behind us and the clutch is gone. Now, how do I know the clutch is gone? Well, a few ways. The problem with the clutch though is you can kind of, well, you can tell if the clutch is gone, but it's very difficult to know if there's any damage done in the gearbox. So we won't really know until we take it out. But the clutch pedal doesn't come all the way up for a start, so that's one thing that there's something wrong. The other thing is the noise this makes when you start it is horrible. You press the clutch, it makes a different noise, it squeals, it smokes. I just moved it from inside to outside and you'd swear the thing was on fire. So I'm guessing the release bearing is either exploded and gone everywhere and done something. Anyway, it's not happy. So we're going to replace the full clutch kit, the 3-piece clutch kit. And also always get a branded clutch. Don't go for the cheaper clutches, they're a waste of time. I'm telling you, you will have problems. Always replace everything, the release bearing, the pressure plate and the actual clutch plate. Now if you've got a dual mass flywheel or solid flywheel, you can convert some of them. This is just a normal solid flywheel, so providing it hasn't been warped or damaged, we don't have to change it. It is a Citroen, so it's going to be awkward. It doesn't, from underneath it looks nice, but I just know it's not going to be. But anyway, so what we're going to do first, now what I'm going to do first, no point me doing it on camera. We've got a little bar coming across here. It's held on by two 17mm bolts, I'd say. Yeah, so like I said, two 16mm bolts. Two on this side, two on that side. And then I'm going to take off the, or drain the oil next. No point me showing you that. And then we'll kind of crack into actually doing the job. Now obviously you can't smell this, but I can smell such a clutch smell. If you've ever smelt a clutch going or burning in a car, there's kind of nothing like it. It's an instant smell you'll never really forget. So we'll just find out exactly what size that is first. Now, for those of you playing along at home, it's a square drive and it's an S8 square drive. That's what we're going to do to undo or to release the gearbox fluid. If you don't do it now, when you take out the drive shaft, it's just going to come all over you. So we might as well do it now. So I'm going to whip off this, drain that, we'll turn the camera back on and we'll start undoing things. Sorted. Hokey cokey, we're underneath now. Normally I do kind of work from the top first, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to undo all the bolts here that I can, then I'm going to do the drive shaft, then we'll go to the top. It's kind of the backwards way of doing it, but it doesn't really matter. One thing you do need to be careful, if you are doing it from underneath first, is don't take out all the bolts. I'm going to leave one bolt, I'm going to loosen it, but I'm going to leave one bolt in. Because when I'm lifting this back up to come underneath to collect the gearbox, if there's no bolts in, this gearbox will come down. That's why normally I'd undo the top gearbox bolts first, do everything, come underneath. Once I've undone the last one, I'll have everything ready. So slightly different way, but it's not a problem. We have a big bar here, which is obviously some sort of sump protector, because this sump sticks down and this bar, I'm guessing there's no other reason for it there. So we're going to take this off. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 16mm, well, 5, 6. 4 16mm bolts and 2 16mm nuts, and then this whole plate will come off. Then we've got a 16mm here as well. I'm just going to loosen that and I'll leave that. So that's what we need to do now. And I want to talk about your bolts. Yes, your bolts. To keep them all together, as you can see, the ones I've taken off here, I've just left them back in place. If you can do that, leave them back in place. When I take off this whole bar, I'm going to put all the bolts back. It's just so then you can't get them mixed up, because gearbox bolts they tend to be different lengths, and if you put the wrong bolt in, you're going to crack the housing, you can crack the block, you can do serious damage. So you do need to be careful. You don't just kind of just go for it. So we'll just loosen this one and leave it there. And this is also connected to the pipe there. So, what size is that? 10mm, I'd say. 10mm, we can take off the pipe, get everything out of our way. So as you can see with the likes of that, I'm going to put the 10mm back there. I'm going to put all the bolts back on. You can't go wrong. Right, it would appear I don't actually need to take that off. There's 2 more bolts, 2 more nuts that there. I don't need to take it off, but I'm going to, just to give me a bit more room. But you don't really need to, I don't think. But I'm going to do it just on the safe side. Right. Let's get these fellas off. The bottom one is going to be awkward, I think. Now, this should be off now. Oh, there we go. There it is. Just gives us that bit more room to be wiggling with everything. Lovely. Now I think there's one more 16mm bolt. I can't show you, but it's right at the top of the drive shaft. And then we can disconnect the cylinder for the clutch, and that's all we can really do from the bottom. The rest is from the top. So once I've undone this one from the back, then we'll start doing the cylinder there, and possibly we can get the starter motor off. Let's see. Right, now we can hope we just get, there you go, there's the cylinder for the clutch. There's 2 5mm Allen keys. I'm going to take this off, and the beauty way of doing it this way, the best way about doing it this way is I won't have to bleed the clutch. As long as I don't disconnect this pipe, I just take it off, take the whole thing out. It can be quite hard to get back in because it's going to be under pressure, but it means you don't have to do any bleeding of the clutch, don't have to do anything. So them 2 5mm Allen keys I'm going to take off with another 16mm bolt here, and then you can just see here my finger is, there's 1, 2, there's the top one, the kind of goldy colour bolts there for the starter motor. Now there's maybe 3, I can only see 2 from the bottom, and there's maybe 1 from the top. I'm not going to be able to film doing that, but as you can see, that's where they are. Nice and handy, to be fair. Then we need to take off the drive shafts. There's 2 little bolts there, you can just see 1 here and 1 at the top. They have 11mm nuts on them. I was hoping just to slide this back and kind of leave it attached, but it's just not going to move, so I'm going to have to strip both sides, both hubs down, and pull both drive shafts out. I'm going to do it on this side. I'll film it on this side, and it's going to be more or less identical on the other side, so we'll film that once I get them little bits off there. Right, let's get this drive shaft out. I've already done the other side, and it's, apart from the 2 little 11mm bolts, it's exactly the same on here. Now with this being a Citroen, and with this having that type of suspension, before you lift the car up or jack it up on the lift, you have to raise the suspension up fully. So this is going to cause us a little bit more problem, because if the suspension was down, I have a lot more room here. It's not the end of the world, we can get away with it, but you just have to be careful with these shocks. You can't really force them up, or you can't really do anything, because you can damage them, and they're not cheap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the bolt here at the back, and I'm going to slide down. I'm going to keep the shock in place, but slide down the hub, the lower wishbone. The wishbones, they're absolutely, they're really difficult to take off without damaging the lower ball joint. So I'm going to do it this way. Some cars you can just take out the lower ball joint, it's exactly the same thing, but we're going to do it on this way with this particular one, because it's easier for everybody. So I'm going to undo this bolt here, which is a 16mm. I've already put a load of lube on it just to help. Now I was hoping that might loosen the bolt, but it hasn't. So I'm just going to screw this back on, if I can. And give it a couple of little love taps. Now it's like everything, you don't want to be hitting it hard. It's just nice and gently, the weight of the hammer, and that has released. Now, there we go. And that's the square end. That pushes up against the hub, and that's what stops it from turning. So that's off. Going to take the track control rod end off, and obviously the drive shaft in there, and then we should be good for moving it down. So just take off the clip, very easy, just get a screwdriver in there, take off the clip, take off the little case, 35mm, drop the screwdriver on the floor, that's important. I always like just to check to see if they're seized, and that one feels very tight, which can be annoying, but cross that bridge. Now 16mm to take off the tripod end. This is a slightly big love tapper, and give it slightly bigger love tapperers. And there we go. Take the cover off then, or the heat shield, and we should hopefully very gently be able to hit this little tab here. Again, just the weight of the hammer. If you have to do it more than the weight of the hammer, you're going to have to stop. I do have a little tool that will go in there and widen it, so make it slide in and out easier, but as long as it's going down with the weight of the hammer, it's really not going to cause you a problem. If you had to be absolutely smacking on this, don't do that. Now, like I said, if this was up, if the suspension was up, this would be a lot easier to do this, but it's not. Got away with it on the other side, so I should be able to get away with it on this side. You can also do, just to help, put a bit of lube around. It's always better with lube. Do have to be careful of the likes of these. That was already broke. That's been crossed up there. That's just for the brake indicator, but especially this one. This is your ABS sensor, so you don't want to be breaking that. And there we go. That now is done. And there we go. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is get a cable tie and cable tie this to the or the shock or the actual drop link, because I don't want this just flapping in the breeze, because we could be breaking other wires. But I do need to get the inner shaft out. That does look like it's seized, so the first thing I'm going to try is just screw the bolt back on till it's flush. Get the hammer. Okay, I'm not going to hit this hard, but I just want to see if it's going to move. Lucky enough it moves. It didn't really have to get the old air tools out, but it moves. Screwdriver, push in the hole. There we go. Simple as that. Cable ties this to there, because as you can see, this is getting stretched, which we don't want. Now, that will keep that there, no pressure on anything. Now, did that just slide out? Oh, that did. Aha! Same as the other side. As you can see, no oil dripping on the floor now, and that's it. Now we can get to the top of the engine. Right, so we're at the top now. Need to get all these covers off, get the airbox out of the way, and then the dog can see the rabbit. There we go. One airbox. You can see the gearbox. I'm just looking for some type of hook that I can use so I can support the engine from the top. If not, I'll have to support it from the bottom. I have a thing for that, which looks like that's going to be the way we have to go, but we're not at that stage yet. I need to get the rest of this off now. Not a big deal. Take off the battery cover. The The old battery's gonna have to come off. Looks like a lot of crap there. Right, the battery out of the way. Looks like the fuse box is gonna have to come off. Hopefully I can just kind of bend it out of the way. Yeah, the bolt that holds, well, maybe not. Wonder if there's a bolt directly underneath here that actually holds the engine mount to the gearbox, but there's three bolts on the gearbox holding the gearbox to the engine mount, and then there's two little Torx, it looks like, which holds the engine mount to the actual car. So I'm wondering if I can release them two. Don't know. Maybe I can just release the engine mount here and I'll have enough room. It's just because it looks to be, it's hard to say. I don't really want to start having to take the ECU, wiring the fuse box and everything out of the way, because that could get messy very, very quickly. It doesn't help with the engine being on the piss either. Well, as you can see, they're the two main bolts to hold the engine mount to the gearbox, and there's a little bolt just there. And then that kind of gold pipe in the middle of that is a bolt which would release the actual engine mount from the car. And then, as you can see, there's two little Torx either side of that. So I'm hoping I can maybe just loosen them two and loosen them three, and maybe that's going to be enough to move that out the way. I'm not really sure, but as you can see, there's no way I'm going to be able to film that. There is a couple of wires we need to unclip. There's the clutch that can be moved out of the way. We'll have, looks like the last bolt for the starter motor. Then there's going to be a bolt here and another bolt there somewhere for the gearbox. But again, as you can see, there's no way I can film that. And then you can just see there the gear linkage cables, so they're going to have to come off too. I just don't know how much I'm going to be able to film, because as you can see, there's just no room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to release a few little clips that I can see, the wiring clips. I'm going to take off you just see it there, the starter motor bolt, and there's one engine gearbox bolt. Take off them and then turn the camera back on and see where we're at. Right, so I've managed to get the gear linked cables off. There was two 13mm bolts, and you'll pop the connections. I'll show you that in maybe part 2 or part 3 once the gearbox gets out of the way. There was one more bolt for the starter motor and two more 16mm bolts for the gearbox. So what I've done now is I've got the engine and gearbox supported. There's nothing I can see to put my bar across to support the engine. Even if I could, the way it's cut out and the way the metal is very flimsy here on the sill, so I just won't be able to do it. And unfortunately, I can't put my one underneath because the sump is a really funny kind of angles. But I've been looking at the engine mounts, and I think we'll get away with the way the engine mounts are actually in place. We should be okay. The engine's going to sag a little bit, but it should be okay. That's why I've got the jack under there, just in case it isn't. If it isn't for whatever reason, we'll have to rethink this, but at least the jack's there, so I can let it down slowly, and if I do see anything pulling or gonna break, I can obviously stop. So just release these two 22mm bolts, and then I think that's everything out, apart from the bolt underneath, which we already know about, but I've left that there on purpose. I think that's everything. But there might be another wire or another bolt. It's just, It's hard to see, but from what I can see, it's everything. Right, I'm just going to let my jack down slowly, and I'm going to see what happens. Now, there's no weight on the jack, just as I thought. No weight there. That's all nice. Yeah, I think we should be good. There's no pressure really on anything major. Just hopefully now I can actually get the gearbox out. But that looks good. So I'm happy with that. Let's bang this baby up. I've taken off the last bolt under here, which we left on purpose. I've also taken off a 10mm bolt, which holds, looks like a power steering line, and is that the radiator? Or is that something to do with the hydraulics? Anyway, there's two pipes there. They're in the way, so I've managed to undo them and kind of push them to the side of the gearbox. So I think we should be good to go. The engine will support itself. It is sagging. You know, it is, yeah, fair enough. It's putting a bit of pressure on the bushings, but it's not going to be for any amount of time. Once I get the gearbox off, that's going to take a lot of pressure off the engine. And if I have to leave it, I'll put the car down and I'll put blocks underneath, so there's no weight on it at all. It's only for when I'm taking it off and putting it back on, there's going to be a little bit of weight. But it shouldn't really cause any problems at all. I know the keyboard warriors will say otherwise, but anyway. So I think this now should separate. I'm hoping. It seems to anyway. Which is obviously a good thing. It means we've got all the bolts off. Now, do we have enough room is the next question. We should do. I can't even, with my transmission jack, grab the gearbox properly. It's just, everything about it is a funny shaped sump, engines tilted. It's just, yeah. But it is a Citroen, so would we expect any more? Right, see if I can kind of manhandle it into some sort of Now, what have we caught on there? Hopefully we haven't caught the gearbox mount, which looks okay. Let's see if we just drop this down a bit, see what happens. We're hitting something. I can't. Oh. Half a ton of a clutch has just fallen in my gob. There's a lovely, it's a good year that. What are you fucking getting stuck on? Because everything looks good. As regards, we don't seem to be catching on anything. Everything seems to be free, but it don't want to come apart. Be careful of these wires, or the pipe should I say. Pipes are out the way now. Let's let it down a bit more. Right. What is that? Something is dripping. Just a bit of water from somewhere. Oh, yeah. The old bearing is a bit bagged. Right, we are very close for this coming off. So, let's see what we can do with it. Just the actual differential of the gearbox now caught. So hopefully, should have really twisted this maybe a bit. No, that's now wedged. Right, this differential, what are we going to do about it? Can we twist the whole thing? There we go. That's what I wanted. There we go. It's just water on top of the gearbox, that's what it was. Just what I found floated inside the gearbox. So there you go. Wonder what the funny noise was? I think it might have something to do with that. Right, so we'll call that as part one. Part two, I'll show you how to take off the clutch, center it, put it back on, and part three is going to be essentially putting it all back together. Now what I have done here, as you can see, the engine is nice and straight again. I've put blocks of wood underneath it, so I'm not putting any pressure on anything. Once the clutch isn't even here yet, so that's why I'm waiting now. So once the clutch arrives, we'll put it all back together. But this is part one. Sorted.